It was just past 10 p.m. on June 11, 1962, when the cold wind from the San Francisco Bay brushed across the gray walls of Alcatraz. Inside one of the most secure prisons in America, 3 inmates, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers John and Clarence, moved like shadows. They had been waiting for this night for months. Every sound, every footstep, every guard rotation had been studied and memorized. This was their only shot, and one wrong move could mean a bullet in the back or a lifetime in solitary confinement. The water outside was black and unforgiving. Guards always said no man could ever survive the icy currents or the 1.5-mile stretch to San Francisco's shore. But Frank Morris wasn't like most inmates. Brilliant, quiet, and dangerously patient, he had spent his life outsmarting systems that were supposed to be unbreakable. Now, standing inside cell 138, he stared at the false wall he'd built from soap, toothpaste, and painted cardboard. Behind it, a tunnel that led to the unknown. Using a makeshift drill built from a vacuum cleaner motor, Morris and the Anglin brothers had spent months chiseling through the concrete behind their cell vents. Each night they hid the noise with music and stuffed the holes with cardboard painted to match the walls. Their escape plan wasn't born from impulse, it was a masterpiece of precision. Everything had been crafted from prison scraps. Raincoats turned into a raft, wooden paddles made from stolen planks, and dummy heads molded from soap, toilet paper, and human hair collected from the barber shop to fool the guards during bed checks. At 10:30 p.m., they moved. One by one, they squeezed through the narrow hole behind their cells, crawling through a dark service corridor filled with steam pipes and dust. The only light came from a small vent that faced the night sky. They could hear the distant hum of the city, freedom just beyond reach. Down below, the guards made their rounds, unaware that Alcatraz's most famous breakout was already underway. As the men climbed to the roof, a sudden clang echoed in the distance, metal on concrete. They froze. Every heartbeat felt louder than the waves outside. Minutes passed before they dared to move again. By midnight, they reached the top of the cell block. They had made it farther than anyone before them. Morris looked down at the courtyard. It was a 30-foot drop to the hard concrete below. The Anglin brothers tied their homemade raft and life jackets to their waists. They knew the water would be brutal, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, strong currents, and shark warnings that had kept countless inmates from even trying. But to them, drowning in freedom was better than dying in a cage. They slid down a drainage pipe, landing silently in the yard. The fog had grown thicker now, cloaking the island in ghostly white. From there, they made their way to the shoreline on the northeast side, carrying the raft folded under their arms. The tide was high, perfect timing. The guards at the watchtower saw nothing. The searchlights swept across the yard, but missed the dark figures crouching by the water's edge. At 11:30 p.m., the men inflated their makeshift raft using a concertina, a small musical instrument turned into an air pump. As the air filled the rubber, the faint hum of wind mixed with the low growl of the waves. The raft was ready. Frank Morris looked back one last time at Alcatraz, the fortress that had caged America's most dangerous men. "Let's go," he whispered. They pushed off into the black water, vanishing into the fog. When dawn broke, Alcatraz was silent. The guards walked their morning rounds as usual, until one of them tapped on Morris's bed, and the head rolled off. What lay there wasn't a sleeping prisoner, but a fake head staring back with painted eyes and real hair. The alarm shattered the morning calm. Sirens screamed across the island. Boats rushed into the bay. Helicopters circled the water. But there was no sign of Frank Morris or the Anglin brothers, just a floating paddle and the shredded remains of a raincoat near Angel Island. Had they drowned, or had they made it? No one knew. And as the fog lifted over San Francisco Bay, one question echoed louder than the alarms themselves. Did the impossible finally happen? The morning after the escape, chaos took over Alcatraz Island. Guards stormed every cell block, checking beds, vents, and corridors in disbelief. The prison that had prided itself as escape-proof had just been broken. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers were gone. What was left behind told a story of genius, patience, and a plan that had worked to perfection. Warden Olin Blackwell was furious. The sight of the fake heads resting neatly on the pillows felt like a personal insult. "No one gets off this rock," he said, a phrase that would soon become infamous. Within hours, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, and Coast Guard surrounded the island. Helicopters hovered low over the bay as officers searched every wave, every piece of floating debris. But there were no bodies, no raft, no trace, only silence and mystery. Investigators soon uncovered the escape route. The vents behind the cells had been widened carefully, showing marks from homemade drills. In the utility corridor behind the cells, agents found a small workshop hidden between pipes, wooden paddles, scraps of rubber from raincoats, and the remains of an air pump built from a concertina. The more they found, the clearer it became this wasn't a reckless attempt, it was a perfectly executed plan. Frank Morris had a reputation inside the system. He was a thinker, a man with an IQ above 130, and a record of multiple escapes. The Anglin brothers were different, strong swimmers from Florida, who had once worked in a factory sealing rubber. That skill had become crucial when they built their raft. Together, the trio had formed the perfect balance: brains, brawn, and determination.
By noon, the search extended beyond Alcatraz. Patrol boats combed the waters between the island and the Golden Gate Bridge. Divers explored the rocky hedges of Angel Island, but the strong currents and freezing water made the search dangerous. Within 48 hours, the Coast Guard had found only a single life jacket and a wooden paddle, both confirmed to have come from the escapees' gear. The FBI took over the case officially on June 12, 1962. Special Agent in Charge W.G. Angle began what would become one of the most exhaustive investigations in U.S. prison history. Agents interviewed inmates, guards, and even family members of the Anglins. The evidence pointed to one conclusion: they might have made it. A turning point came when investigators found a small piece of plastic, believed to be part of the raft, washed up on Angel Island's northern shore. The discovery reignited debate. Had the men actually reached land? Some believed the raft was destroyed by the waves. Others thought the men swam the rest of the way. As weeks passed, reports began to surface. A San Francisco resident claimed to have seen a shaky-looking boat drifting near the marine shoreline the night of the escape. Another said he heard voices calling in the dark. None of these accounts were ever confirmed. Then came the strangest clue of all: a postcard. Months after the escape, the Anglin family received a Christmas card signed John and Clarence. The handwriting was similar to the brothers, but the FBI couldn't prove it was real. It had no postmark, no address, just a message that read, "We made it, just like we said." Investigators were divided. Some believed the trio had drowned within minutes of entering the freezing bay. The water temperature that night was below 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Survival time estimated at less than an hour. The tides, according to Coast Guard data, were pulling toward the Pacific Ocean, not the San Francisco shore. If that was true, the men could have been swept miles out to sea. But not everyone was convinced. One FBI diver later admitted they planned too perfectly to die that fast. Those men weren't reckless, they were calculated. Back on Alcatraz, the prison tightened its security like never before. Every vent was reinforced with steel, every cell inspected. Yet the damage was already done. The myth of the escape-proof prison was shattered. By the end of 1962, the FBI had logged over 17,000 man-hours on the case. Still no bodies, no raft, no confirmed sighting. The official report listed the escapees as missing and presumed drowned. But then something happened that reignited the case. In 1965, a man in Brazil claimed to have met two Americans living under false names. They matched the Anglin brothers' descriptions. Photographs taken decades later, which showed two men on a farm in South America bearing a haunting resemblance to John and Clarence. The FBI dismissed the evidence as inconclusive. But whispers began to spread. Maybe the Rock had finally been beaten. And if they were alive, where had they gone?
As night fell over San Francisco Bay once again, the same fog that covered their escape now concealed the truth. Were they dead beneath the waves or living freely somewhere, watching the world forget? For years after the 1962 escape, Alcatraz stood as a monument to mystery, the fortress that was supposed to be unbreakable, yet 3 men had vanished into the night and never returned. The world wanted answers, but none came. The FBI kept the case open for 17 years. Agents followed every lead, from Florida to Mexico, from Canada to South America. They searched every rumor, every reported sighting, and every supposed photograph. But every trail eventually went cold. Still, the idea that Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers might have survived refused to die. In 1967, 5 years after the escape, a tip reached the FBI from an inmate in Atlanta. He claimed to have shared a cell with a man who said he'd helped the Anglin brothers after they reached shore. According to the story, a car had been waiting for them near the Marin Headlands. The trio supposedly drove south, never to be seen again. Agents investigated, but no proof was ever found. Then came the photographs. In the 1970s, the Anglin family received 2 old photos showing 2 men standing on a farm in Brazil. The faces look shockingly similar to John and Clarence Anglin. When the pictures were analyzed decades later, facial experts found an over 95% match. But without physical evidence, the FBI couldn't confirm it. Meanwhile, Alcatraz had changed forever. In 1963, just 1 year after the escape, the prison was officially closed. The government said it was because of high maintenance costs, but many believed the escape played a bigger role. The Rock, once thought to be the most secure prison in America, had been defeated. The escape also inspired change across the entire prison system. More advanced security measures were introduced, and new maximum security prisons were designed to prevent another Alcatraz situation. Yet, despite the improvements, none captured the public imagination like that foggy night in June 1962. Over time, the mystery grew into legend. Books, documentaries, and films tried to piece together what really happened. Clint Eastwood's 1979 film Escape from Alcatraz reignited public fascination, portraying Morris and the Anglin brothers not as criminals, but as masterminds, clever, calm, and determined to do the impossible. But even with all the attention, the truth stayed hidden. Then, in 2013, more than 50 years after the escape, the San Francisco Police Department received a handwritten letter. The writer claimed to be John Anglin. The letter said, "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely. I'm 83 years old now and in bad shape. I have cancer. If you announce on TV that I will get medical help and not go to jail, I'll write back and tell you where I am. This is no joke." The FBI tested the letter for fingerprints and DNA, but could not confirm if it was real. They officially said results were inconclusive. But for millions of people, that single letter changed everything. If it was real, it meant the men had survived for over 5 decades. By then, the FBI had closed the case, but the U.S. Marshal Service kept it open, just in case. To this day, it remains an active investigation, meaning that if any of the men were ever proven alive, they could still technically be arrested. Today, Alcatraz is a tourist site visited by millions each year. Tour guides still tell the story, how 3 men outsmarted America's most secure prison and vanished without a trace. Visitors can see their cells, the fake heads, and even the hole in the wall where the escape began. Everything remains as it was, frozen in time,
waiting for answers. Standing there, it's easy to imagine the sound of dripping water, the chill of the fog, and the distant waves that carried them away. Did Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers drown in the cold San Francisco Bay? Or did they survive, living quietly somewhere, watching the world's greatest manhunt fail? No one knows for sure, but one thing is certain. On that foggy night in June 1962, 3 prisoners from Alcatraz pulled off one of the most daring escapes in American history. And to this day, the mystery of the Alcatraz escape still echoes across the bay, a story of courage, intelligence, and the never-ending human desire for freedom. If you believe true stories like this deserve to be told, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real-life escapes that shocked America.